Hello and welcome again to the University of Law. In today's video we are going to be exploring the David Tennant audio dramas at Big Finish. And when I said the David Tennant audio dramas, I mean the ones in which he plays the 10th Doctor. Some of you may know that David Tennant had played roles with Big Finish prior to becoming the Doctor on television. However, this particular video just focuses on his appearances as the Doctor at Big Finish. I'm going to try and be as quick as I can because you may not realise, but there's actually more content than you think, and to get through it in a reasonable length of time, I'm going to be as speedy as I can. So, for a little bit of context, Big Finish was founded back in the 90s. In 1999, it got permission to the license to make Doctor Who audio drama. When the show returned to television in 2005, it could continue to make audio drama. However, it was only allowed to include characters from the 20th century run of the show. Now, there were some exceptions over time. There was a reference to the Ninth Doctor in The Kingmaker, which was a 5th Doctor main range audio drama. There was the 11th Doctor's TARDIS featured on the front of the Unit Dominion box set because there was ambiguity around whether one of the characters was a future Doctor. There was an appearance of the 2005 design of the Daleks on a Gallifrey box set alluding to the Time War. And during the Dark Eyes season featuring the 8th Doctor, the whole inclusion of the Daleks was kind of alluding to an oncoming war with the Time Lords, although it wasn't explicitly stated, it was hinted at, and even the appearance of the Master in that set also hinted at fulfilling the memories of John Simm's Master that he'd been resurrected by the Time Lords for something, and that was referenced in Dark Eyes. There were some short trips that kind of hinted at the Time War as well, but they didn't have the license to actually create content with new series characters without permission on a case-by-case basis. And that all changed in 2015 when they got the license to create content featuring new series characters up to, at that point, the end of the 11th Doctor's era. A few months later, there were rumours spreading that David Tennant was to reprise his role with Catherine Tate for a series of audio dramas, and those rumours proved to be true. And a year later, this is what we got. It was the 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 1. Now, originally this was produced as a slipcover book. I'll show you a later one like this, which slides out. It has your discs inside and some wonderful features in there as well. At that point in time, I wasn't in a position to put that on my shelf. My shelf couldn't take, it wasn't tall enough to keep that with my other CDs, and so I decided instead to get the download version simply because I wanted the bonus features on that, which you didn't get by buying them vanilla, so to speak. Now, eventually, about a year or so later, they released this, which was a repackaged version of the 3 stories in slimmer packaging. I could put it on my shelf. Doesn't have the extra features, but it does mean you get all 3 stories of that first volume together. Now, this was David Tennant's relaunch with Big Finish, both him and Catherine Tate reprising their roles, of course. What's interesting to note is that when David Tennant returned to Big Finish, it had been 6 years since he'd stopped playing the role, which was less than both Sylvester McCoy and Paul McGann. Which was longer, I should say it was longer than when Paul McGann and Sylvester McCoy both had their respective Big Finish debuts. So it gives you a bit of food for thought there. Now, what's great about this box set is there's 3 stories, and it kind of follows the pattern of those Russell T Davies early 2000s Doctor Who stories. We've got Technophobia, Time Reaver and Death and the Queen. It's made clear that these stories all take place around Silence of the Library. So what you get really is the 10th Doctor and Donna just having fun at sort of the height of their travelling together. They know the drill, they're having fun. Technophobia is very much a of the era, like a very much an Russell T Davies, or Davis, I should say, season opener, set in modern day Something's Gone Wrong. That was an interesting story. Time Reaver is very much of it's time for Big Finish. It feels very much Big Finish 2016, which for me was one of my golden eras. Really, it's the kind of unique story that you can only really explore in that format, where it's more for people who are really into Doctor Who. There's some really lovely sci-fi element to it, and I really enjoy that story. As I said, 2016 for me will always be the golden era of Big Finish. We've got some great run of box sets. This was one of them, and Time Reaver is really one of those. To me, I listen to it and it just brings me back to that period. Death and the Queen is a really fun story. It's very much a Donna story, and again, the whole box set is just really enjoyable. I mean, I've said it before in my previous video about Adric. Often when it's the first box set, a lot of it is finding its feet and it's reintroducing you to the 10th Doctor and of course Donna. It's their debut here at Big Finish. But what's really nice about this box set is it does 3 really fun, enjoyable stories that evoke the era and just kind of relaunch it. So as with a lot of Big Finish, you start to get into the more exciting things a little bit later once you've established it. But at this point, it's all about re-establishing here at Big Finish, and they really do start with a bang. So that's the first volume. Now, a year later, we got the amazing, fantastic announcement that we were going to be getting audio dramas with the 10th Doctor and Rose, that classic duo. Now, again, you could have got a slip book. I decided this time just to go and buy the vanilla releases. So, in order, they are Intimately the Zaros, and again, Big Finish went for the whole copy in the that very familiar Russell T Davies format of having an Earthbound story with Jackie to start off, Intimately of the Zaros. For me, probably the standout story of the set. Is just so fun, and of course features aliens who are very much in the ilk of like the Jadoon, etc. So it really felt like a really fun story that would have fitted in with its era. The Sword of the Chevalier, so we've got historical here. Again, a really fun story, which really kind of plays to the 10th Doctor's strengths. Again, feels very much like a Season 2, Series 2 story, and very much in the ilk of stories like The Girl in the Fireplace, so it has that really nice feel to it. So it's historical where you can have a little bit of fun. It really suits his characterisation. Then we've got Cold Vengeance, again kind of following that pattern of bringing back a classic monster. Obviously the 10th Doctor never got to face the Ice Warriors on screen, but here he gets to face them on audio with Rose. No continuity issues there because they never met later on, so that was perfect. What I like is that Ice Warrior stories, they do tend to follow a pattern, and a lot of the time I like it. And in fact, there was a story recently, a Second Doctor Beyond War Games story featuring the Ice Warriors, and yes, although it did follow the kind of the usual pattern that you get with a Ice Warrior story, it did it in a really fun way. So the fact is, Ice Warrior stories, they do tend to be quite similar, but you still have fun with them. This one felt really original though, really original, and I really enjoyed this story. So that's the second series. We then didn't get anything in 2018 except this. There was a spin-off about Jenny, the Doctor's daughter, obviously played by Georgia Moffat, who later married David Tennant. What's notable is that although the whole box set is about Jenny on her own, this particular box set does feature a cameo from the 10th Doctor at the very end. Jenny sends a distress signal, but by the time she's gone, the Doctor picks up the signal and arrives to find that she's long gone. So that was really interesting. So to be a completist, the 10th Doctor does feature in the final story of the Jenny box set, the first Jenny box set, called Zero Space. So that was really our only David Tennant 10th Doctor content in that year. But the following year, we were lucky enough to get this. And by this point, I did have a shelf big enough to have the slipcover box set. So what you got here is the 10th Doctor Adventures. It opens up, it's really nice inside, and you've got your pages in there, you've got your artwork, you've got your discs in these pages here. You've got, a nice bit of commentary in there as well. But reason why I just had to buy this one is that you get costume designs, you get storyboards, what it would look like. It really is just a wonderful package, this one. So I definitely recommend this one. In terms of the stories, what we've got to start with, I just reminded myself, is No Place, which is, again, it's just a wonderful story that very much feels of its time. It uses those characters, Donna's family, because this was another box set featuring Donna. It uses those characters really well. We have, obviously, Wilf back, and yeah, it just feels like it came from Series 4. We've got 1 Mile Down. It's a really fun, again, another Jenny T. Colgan story. She wrote the Time Reaver. I'm sure she wrote Time Reaver. I'd have to double check that, but no, this is a really good story, and yeah, it's got a really nice sci-fi concept to it, and there's some lovely artwork in here exclusive to this box set. And then The Creeping Death, which is a historical story, which it felt to me very much like The Idiot's Lantern. It had that feel to it, and I really enjoyed that. So, Volume 3, another hit. Now, up to this point, the box sets had very much been playing with sort of the nostalgia and looking at reuniting him with classic companions like Donna and Rose. However, he'd been doing this for a few years and things were starting to warm up. Before we get anywhere, though, he did make a cameo. I'm going to try and fit this in the Legacy of Time box set, which was commemorating 20 years of Big Finish having the Doctor Who licence. Although he's not in most of the story, he does make a cameo at the end, along with the first and second Doctors. So this is kind of a 10th Doctor story because he features in it. But this is a great 8-disc epic, really fun story and a lovely box set. 6-hour story. So that's that one. Now, as far as we were concerned, 2020 we were only going to be getting one appearance of the 10th Doctor, and that was going to be in Donna Noble Kidnapped. Now, we all know that David Tennant is a very busy and in-demand actor, and I think we all just feel really grateful that he records these, because you know it's pretty obvious when he's so busy and in demand that he does this because he does it for us. He does it for us as the fans, and yeah, we're all really supportive of the fact that he does give his time. Now, this box set is a spin-off. It's set shortly after Silence in the Library, the 2-parter. What's amazing actually is often people talk about the classic series Doctor Who and they say, oh, you know, they didn't usually explore the repercussions, emotion on characters, and Big Finish fills in the gaps. Well, interestingly, this does it for the new series, because Donna Noble has a whole life inside the library when she's backed up on the Moon hard drive, and she has a husband and kids, and all of that gets taken away from her. And what this story does is it deals with her emotional dealing with that emotionally afterwards. But unfortunately, she gets whisked away on an adventure. Her and Nikki Wardley are wonderful together, as they are on television. She plays a new character, Donna's friend. The box set's really fun, a really good series, and it ends with a cameo of the 10th Doctor in the final story. Now, as far as we were concerned, that was the only release we were getting in 2020. When I listened to it, we had no idea when it was released what was about to happen. And of course, what happened in 2020 was we had the pandemic, and suddenly a lot of us had a lot of time on our hands, and they were able to get David Tennant to record what's essentially the bulk of his Big Finish catalogue. And the first release we got from that was this, which is Out of Time. It's a wonderful story which usually in polls, I know this is controversial, but usually in polls you tend to get Tom Baker comes top when it's kind of a classic poll, and David Tennant when it's a new series poll. So they're two of the kind of most celebrated Doctors when it comes to polls. And you look at, we've got the classic Daleks, we've got the new series Daleks. This is just a wonderful celebration of Doctor Who, and it was so fun, and they work so well together, and I'd really recommend this. This is just a wonderful story, and if you ever want an introduction to Big Finish, this is a lovely one to start with. You don't need to have heard anything else. It's just a really fun story, and yeah, and I'd really recommend it. So that's Out of Time. Now, we then got later that year this lovely box set, which is the 10th Doctor from River Song. It takes place shortly after Journey's End. The Doctor is still mourning Donna, and the River Song essentially gets him to come to terms with that loss. You can see here there's a cameo from the 5th Doctor in that first story. There's also a cameo from the 6th Doctor as well. We've got 3 stories in here. We have Expiry Dating, Got the Fifth Doctor there. Also, there's a reference to the First Doctor as well, I believe, if I remember correctly. We have Precious Annihilation. That's a really nice timey-wimey story. Really enjoyed that. Felt very, very Stephen Moffat, that story. Felt a really enjoyable one. And Ghosts, which is... actually, that was a really interesting... I'm trying to think of how to phrase it now without giving too much away. There was a good twist to it. A kind of timey-wimey twist. Yeah, no, this was a really wonderful box set, so definitely would recommend picking that one up. So, by that point, we'd also had announced that there were some amazing releases coming up in 2021. But we did get a surprise, because very early in 2021, the 10th Doctor made a cameo in River Song Series 8. It was only a very quick cameo. The 9th and War Doctors were also referenced, but the 10th Doctor actually makes a cameo as played by David Tennant. And what's notable about this box set is it also sets up an epic that was about to start at Big Finish, and that epic was Dalek Universe, which we were all expecting because it had been announced in 2020. Dalek Universe is a 9-part series. It's basically a new series for the 10th Doctor. It's set between the Waters of Mars and End of Time, so it's like an extra series. What's great about it is that most of these audios we're looking at now, so the 10th Doctor one, the Out of Time one, and the ones you're about to look at, they're all set in those kind of final days of the 10th Doctor's life. So you can reference all of that character development that he had on television and drive it a little bit further as well. This, I'm going to say very little because I think you should definitely listen to it. This one, amazing cliffhanger of episode 1 that you won't see coming, and it's done really well. It's you think, how on earth are they going to get out of this one? And they do it really, really well, really, really cleverly. And it's one of those lovely, clever cliffhangers where you slowly start to realise what's happening, and just as it's about to be revealed, you realise yourself. So it's really clever writing. So, wonderful story. Obviously got the Mechanoids in. Some lovely references to the Terry Nation universe. Dark Universe 2. What's great is there's a lot of callbacks to the 60s. Anya Kingdom, who featured in some 4th Doctor stories. It also kind of takes her story forward, looks at that development as well. And it kind of reflects on who the Doctor is. He's been thrown back before the Time War, and it reflects on who he is, how he feels, and where he's going based on what's been happening in his life. So really lovely for character development. And obviously the Daleks are his big enemies, really, the 10th Doctor. So this is a wonderful box, and again, some lovely stories, some lovely twists, and some lovely revelations around our main characters as well. And finally, we've got this box set, Dalek Universe. As you can see, we've got River Song, we've got Davros. Yeah, I don't need to say much more than that. You can just see from that artwork what a wonderful story it is. I found each box that kind of delved into the lore of different eras. The first two boxes were more 60s. This is definitely a lovely celebration of the 80s Dalek stories. The 10th Doctor does manage to get back to his home time. However, there are some wonderful twists around our main characters, and it really plays with the lore of, I won't say too much, but 2 of the great Terry Nation monsters. So that was Dalek Universe. That was the big reveal, really. The bulk of what he recorded in lockdown. However, we did get these 2 releases in 2021. So this one, I've printed a cover myself because it was download only, but it was the Time Lord Victorious release. So he doesn't quite meet the 8th Doctor, but there is a crossover there. That's a really fun story. It's certainly a good story for the 8th and 10th Doctors, and it's certainly a vital piece in the Time Lord Victorious puzzle, which I definitely encourage you to be collecting. And then we've got Out of Time 2, the second Out of Time story. This time uniting him with the 5th Doctor, who obviously he previously met on Time Crash, and of course is famously his father-in-law. This is an interesting story. It's obviously we had the Daleks in the first one. Now we've got the Cybermen. Daleks you probably more associate with the 4th Doctor, Cybermen more so with the 5th. And it plays around with time, and obviously the whole idea of the sort of Cybermen, the parallels with the catacombs, etc. So that's another fun story. Out of Time 2. 2022, this year, we had 3 releases we were expecting, but we did get a surprise early on. So in January 2022, the Peladon box set came out. There was speculation for quite a while around who would be in this box set. I think a lot of us assumed the 6th and 8th because they tend to crop up in these other spin-off box sets. There was kind of rumours around whether the 3rd Doctor would be played by Tim Treloar, obviously because there is a history of the 3rd Doctor in Peladon. There were some rumours about Tom Baker or David Tennant being in them. However, it wasn't until I listened to the first episode, which focuses just on King Peladon, that we do actually get a cameo from the 10th Doctor, and his cameo essentially sets the whole box set storyline off. So it was a lovely... I just remember I was cooking while I was listening to it, and I suddenly heard the sound of the TARDIS, and I had to turn the expeller off because I heard the voice and I thought, is that really him? And I turned it off, and it was indeed David Tennant back as the 10th Doctor. So that was a lovely start to 2022. And since then he's recorded Out of Time, he's released Out of Time 3, which is my favourite of the Out of Time stories. Wink with the 6th Doctor, they play so well, they bounce off so well together. It's got the Weeping Angels, and Lisa McMullen did something so original with the Weeping Angels. I think it's tricky to do something new with these classic monsters, but there really is just... She's sort of a planet that just works perfect, and there's a lovely timey-wimey element to it, but it feels very much like it could have come from Stephen Moffat's mind. It's just a wonderful, wonderful story, and my favourite of the Out of Time. Perhaps my favourite of all the 10th Doctor releases, other than the odd one in Dalek Universe. Yeah, I think I'd say it would be actually my favourite of all the 10th Doctor audios. A big finish so far. Then we've got this lovely box set. Self-Defense is a 4-hour epic. The 10th Doctor arrives in the final story. The final episode of the story, I should say. And it's just fun to see these two together. They do get around the fact, obviously, you're probably thinking, how do they meet? Because when they first meet, they don't recognise each other, and then eventually he regenerates into John Sim. How does that work? Well, they do get around it quite nicely, and it doesn't get in the way of the story at all. It's not messy, and it's really fun. So, and that brings us up to date, because next week, as I record, so the week commencing the 12th of September 2022 is when I believe we'll be getting at some point that week the 10th Doctor Classic Companions, which is a box set in which he meets Leela, K9, Nyssa and Ace. So after that, who knows what's going to come next in terms of the 10th Doctor audio dramas. Obviously, David Tennant is a very busy in demand actor. He's recorded most of this during lockdown, and as far as I'm aware, that's the last set to feature him that was recorded in lockdown. We may well get something for the 60th anniversary next year, but even if we don't, it is clear that he's returning on television as a part of those celebrations. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've kept it as short as I could, and hopefully I've proven to you that there is a lot more than you'd have thought of the 10th Doctor at Big Finish, and I definitely encourage you to take my recommendations and dive in. Enjoy.